Mist hung low over the sprawling Ballarat Goldfields as dawn struggled to break through the cold Australian sky. The scattered tents and shanties, hastily built by hopeful miners from every corner of the world, looked more like a fragile village clinging to the edge of survival than a thriving community. The atmosphere was heavy with unease and restless energy. For months, the miners had been enduring relentless hardship. Harsh weather, grueling labor, and the constant pressure of government taxes that felt less like fees and more like chains binding them to a system they did not control. The year was 1854, and the Victorian gold rush was in full force. News of gold discoveries had spread across the globe, drawing thousands of men and families alike to these harsh lands in the hopes of striking it rich. But beneath the shimmering allure of gold lay a growing anger that threatened to ignite. The colonial government's mining license system demanded that every miner pay a fee regardless of whether they found any gold. These licenses were expensive and had to be renewed monthly. Failure to produce a license on demand often resulted in fines, arrests, or worse. Police raids known as license hunts were frequent, violent, and humiliating. Among the throngs of miners was Peter Lalor, an Irish immigrant whose eyes burned with fierce determination. Lalor had arrived in Australia fleeing the famine and political turmoil back home, seeking a fresh start in the land of opportunity. But the reality he found was far harsher than the dream he had chased. The miners' frustrations were palpable, and Lalor quickly became a leader for those who felt voiceless and oppressed. Each day brought more stories of injustice. Miners beaten or arrested for failing to show their licenses. Families living in fear of sudden raids. The cost of survival rising as government officials grew richer from taxes while the miners barely scraped by. Yet, despite this oppression, the miners shared a common resolve: to fight for fairness and the right to work the land without unjust interference. It was at Bakery Hill that the spirit of rebellion began to take shape. On a chilly November evening, miners gathered under the open sky, their voices swelling with urgency. They formed the Ballarat Reform League, a coalition demanding political representation, fair taxation, and the abolition of the oppressive mining license system. A charter was drafted, listing their rights and grievances, and the flag of the Southern Cross was raised high, a powerful symbol of unity and defiance. The charter was more than a list of complaints. It was a declaration that the miners were no longer willing to accept unjust rule. They sought the right to vote, the right to be heard, and the right to live with dignity, but the government refused to listen. Instead, officials labeled the miners as troublemakers and threats to law and order. As days passed, tensions escalated. License hunts became more aggressive, and the miners responded with strikes and protests. Skirmishes broke out as police arrested miners without warrants, demanding immediate payment of fines. The miners fought back with stones and makeshift weapons, refusing to be cowed. The goldfields became a battleground, and the eyes of the colony turned toward Ballarat. The government, desperate to assert control, ordered reinforcements to the goldfields. Soldiers arrived with bayonets fixed and muskets loaded, ready to quell what they called an insurrection. The miners, though fewer in number and poorly armed, were united by a fierce determination to protect their rights and their lives. With their backs against the wall, the miners constructed a crude stockade on the Eureka lead, using timber and stones from the surrounding area. It was not a fortress, but it was a symbol, a statement that they would not back down. Above their makeshift barricades, the Eureka flag flew proudly, its stars glittering in the sunlight, a beacon for all who longed for justice. The night before the confrontation, a tense silence settled over the stockade. Men huddled together, sharing stories and hopes for a better future. They knew the odds were against them. The government forces numbered over 150 soldiers, while the miners counted barely 150 defenders. But their spirit was unbreakable. Then, Just before dawn on December 3, 1854, the soldiers advanced. The attack was swift and brutal. The miners fought fiercely, defending their ground with everything they had. But the government troops overwhelmed them. Within an hour, the stockade was breached and the rebellion crushed. 15 men lost their lives in the battle. Many more were wounded or arrested. The miners' physical defeat seemed absolute. Yet, in the hearts of those who had witnessed the courage and sacrifice, a new movement was born, one that would shake the foundations of colonial rule and pave the way for democracy in Australia. The government had hoped to crush the spirit of the miners with force, but instead, they had ignited a fire that could not be extinguished. The news of the Eureka Stockade spread quickly, stirring public debate about justice, governance, and the rights of ordinary citizens. The miners, once dismissed as troublemakers, became heroes to many who saw in their fight the universal struggle for fairness and representation. Peter Lalor emerged as a symbol of resistance. Though arrested and charged with treason, he was later released, his leadership recognized as vital in the push for reform. Over time, the government abolished the costly mining license, replacing it with a more affordable miner's right that also granted voting rights. The colonial administration was forced to listen to the people and begin building a more democratic society. The Eureka Rebellion was not simply a clash over gold and taxes. It was a grassroots revolution born from injustice and hope, a struggle for political rights that echoed far beyond the Ballarat Goldfields. Its legacy continues to inspire Australians today, a reminder that the fight for justice often begins with the courage of ordinary people standing together against oppression. The sun rose slowly over the scorched earth where the Eureka Stockade once stood, casting long shadows over the battered remnants of the miners' defiant stand. The battle had lasted less than an hour, yet its impact would echo through the decades. Though the rebellion was crushed, the spirit of resistance was far from broken. Across the colony of Victoria and beyond, voices rose in outrage at the heavy-handed response of the government and police. The miners' courage in the face of overwhelming force sparked a new chapter in the quest for fairness and democracy. Reports of the violent crackdown spread rapidly through newspapers, taverns, and town halls. The image of unarmed miners standing their ground against trained soldiers stirred deep sympathy among ordinary citizens. It became clear that the government's approach had alienated not only the miners, but many others who saw injustice in the system. This shift in public opinion forced politicians and officials to reconsider their position. Peter Lalor, once a rebel leader and prisoner accused of treason, became a symbol of the struggle for rights and reform. His story inspired many, from miners to merchants, and even some members of the establishment who recognized the need for change. Lalor's defiant words and unwavering commitment to the cause elevated him from a simple immigrant miner to a key figure in Australia's democratic history. The government, sensing the growing unrest, moved to enact reforms that addressed the core grievances of the miners. The costly monthly mining license was abolished and replaced with the miner's right, a far more affordable permit that also granted holders the right to vote. This change was revolutionary, as it expanded political representation to a class of people previously excluded from the democratic process. For the first time, miners and working-class citizens had a voice in government decisions that affected their lives. The Eureka Rebellion became a powerful catalyst for broader social and political reforms across the Australian colonies. It ignited conversations about equality, justice, and the role of government in protecting the rights of its citizens. The principles fought for at Eureka, fair taxation, political representation, and respect for the individual, began to shape the emerging identity of Australia as a democratic nation. The Eureka flag, once a banner of rebellion, transformed into a lasting symbol of unity and resistance. Its distinctive Southern Cross constellation came to represent the shared hopes of Australians for freedom and fairness. Today, the flag is revered as a national icon, flown in honor of the courage shown by the miners and their fight for a fairer society. Eureka also left a deep legacy in Australia's labour movement and political landscape. The rebellion's spirit of grassroots activism inspired generations of workers, unions, and reformers who sought to improve conditions and gain political influence. The idea that ordinary people could challenge authority and demand change became a cornerstone of Australian political culture. In the years following the rebellion, Peter Lalor entered the political arena. Elected to the Victorian Legislative Assembly, he used his position to advocate for the rights and welfare of miners and working-class citizens. His journey from rebel to lawmaker embodied the transformation sparked by Eureka, a movement born out of resistance that became a force for constructive change. The story of the Eureka Rebellion reminds us that democracy is not given. It is earned through struggle and sacrifice. It teaches the importance of standing united against injustice and the power of grassroots movements to reshape society. The miners' fight was not merely about gold, but about dignity, respect, and the right to participate in decisions that govern their lives. The goldfields may have been harsh and unforgiving, but from them rose a rebellion that shaped a nation. The echoes of that uprising continue to inspire Australians to defend their freedoms and uphold the values of equality and justice. The Australian Eureka Rebellion stands as a testament to the courage of ordinary people and the enduring quest for democracy,